Imagine waking up one morning and learning that a massive government, one of the world's most powerful, has literally stopped working. Departments shut their doors, federal workers are furloughed, services halt, and headlines are filled with political brinkmanship. That's not a dystopian fantasy. That's the reality the United States has been facing as Congress fails to pass funding for the government, pushing the country to the brink of a shutdown. The U.S. government operates on a yearly budget cycle. Every fiscal year, Congress must pass a set of appropriations bills to fund federal departments and agencies. If it fails to pass these bills by the deadline, traditionally October 1st, large swaths of the federal government are legally required to shut down. This isn't a political buzzword anymore. This has happened repeatedly, and as this video is being made, another shutdown is looming or already underway. So what exactly is a shutdown? On paper, it's simple. When funding expires, the government stops paying for most non-essential functions. In practice, it's chaos for millions of workers, services, citizens relying on government support, and even the global economy. To understand the current situation, we need to rewind to last year, when us lawmakers failed to agree on a budget for fiscal year 2026. That triggered a shutdown in October 2025, after policymakers couldn't bridge their differences on key spending issues. It became the longest shutdown in U.S. history, lasting weeks, leaving hundreds of thousands of workers furloughed and creating massive disruption in everything from national parks to air travel. Now, in early 2026, Congress is again wrestling with the budget. Some lawmakers are refusing to fund the Department of Homeland Security unless major reforms are implemented in immigration enforcement, including body cameras for agents and changes to how searches are conducted. These policy demands have become a sticking point in negotiations, raising the real specter of another shutdown. So what happens during a shutdown? The answer depends on who you are and what you rely on. First, let's talk about the federal workforce. Approximately 2 million workers depend on federal funding, from national park rangers and tax agents to military personnel and law enforcement officers. When a shutdown happens, non-essential employees are furloughed, sent home without pay. Essential workers, like air traffic controllers, TSA screeners, FBI agents, and active duty military, are required to continue working to protect life and property. But they do so without pay until funding is restored. Even programs that many people think of as government staples can get tangled up in the shutdown web. Passport processing, business loans, federal research grants, and housing assistance often slow to a crawl or stop entirely. And while big mandatory programs like Social Security and Medicare continue because they don't require annual appropriations, their administrative services can be delayed, leading to frustrating holdups for beneficiaries. For everyday Americans, the ripple effects are real. For travelers, long lines and delayed flights can become the norm because air traffic controllers and TSA agents are working unpaid, and training and staffing levels drop. Major airlines have urged Congress to ensure these critical workers are paid even during a shutdown, warning that flight disruptions like those seen during the 43-day shutdown last year could return. That previous shutdown led to millions of disrupted passengers, tens of thousands of affected flights, and billions in economic losses. Small businesses and entrepreneurs also feel the pressure. Applying for government loans or permits becomes a bureaucratic black hole. National parks and museums, loved by domestic and international tourists, either close or operate with skeleton staff, affecting local economies that depend on tourism traffic. And while the U.S. government might seem like an internal matter, the world watches closely. The U.S. is deeply embedded in global markets, security alliances, and trade. Prolonged shutdowns broadcast political instability and can influence markets in emerging economies, foreign policy negotiations, and investor confidence overseas. In a world already buffeted by economic uncertainty, these political standoffs have consequences far beyond Washington, D.C. itself. Here's the paradox. Even during a shutdown, some of the most essential safety functions continue. Social Security beneficiaries will still receive checks, Medicare and Medicaid continue making payments, and the Postal Service keeps operating because it funds itself. National parks, despite misconceptions, might stay open if they were already fully funded for the year. But the people who make these things possible, the federal employees who process claims, review loan files, manage park facilities, may not be working or being paid. That means bottlenecks everywhere. Slow-moving paperwork, reduced customer support, and pick and choose shutdown services that leave citizens wondering what's on and what's off. Economically, shutdowns bite hard. The Congressional Budget Office estimated past shutdowns shaved billions off U.S. GDP and left portions of that economic output permanently lost. Businesses dependent on government contracts suffer. Consumer confidence dips, and uncertainty becomes a drag on markets. And yet, year after year, shutdowns have become part of the U.S. political landscape, a recurring threat that rises whenever deep partisan divides clash over fiscal priorities. At their core, shutdowns are the result of political brinkmanship, where neither side gives ground until impending collapse forces a compromise. Sometimes that compromise comes at immense cost. Currently, Senate leaders have tried to avert another shutdown by advancing a deal to temporarily keep funding for critical departments while negotiations continue. But the House of Representatives isn't in session yet, making a brief lapse more likely. So even as lawmakers scramble to find middle ground, the government could briefly shut down again, a few hours, a few days, or longer, depending on how political negotiations play out. Meanwhile, agencies like FEMA, responsible for disaster response, are telling Americans they do have some funding to respond to ongoing emergencies such as winter storms, even in a shutdown. But that's like sailing with limited crew and uncertain supplies, enough for immediate needs, but not for long-term operations. So what does all this mean? In simple terms, shutdowns are not just political theater. They affect real people, ease paychecks, disrupt services millions rely on, shake economic confidence, and send shockwaves through industries like aviation and tourism. They are a reminder that when a government fails to work, the consequences aren't abstract. They're immediate and felt in every corner of society. Whether you're watching from Karachi, London, or Seoul, these shutdowns matter. They shape the narrative of American political stability, influence global economic trends, and impact international relations at a time when many countries are navigating economic turbulence and geopolitical tensions. And while politics will always be messy, it's worth asking, what happens when the machinery of the most powerful government in the world grinds to a halt? The answer isn't merely about politics. It's about people, systems, and the delicate balance that holds it all together.